Okay, Paul, you said you're not ready for this one. And you may not be, but he sent me his biography, his vitae. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe that I've been talking to this man all these years and didn't know half of what he had accomplished. So this is quite interesting. But first of all, he went to the University of Missouri. I didn't even know he was a Midwesterner from that part of town. And get this, you know what his major was? English literature.
Actually,
okay?
Victorian poets.
Oh my God. I mean, who does that? It goes from Victorian literature to the next place, let's see.
You have to realize that Wordsworth and a number of those poets were really hikers. They loved to hike. They loved to go out in nature.
Okay. You know, I buy that.
Browning, Elizabeth
English
Browning,
literature. You must have been a romantic or something.
Absolutely.
Okay. But anyways, you were a Kansas City Star City desk reporter as well. So that's
right.
kind of interesting.
Oh, I had a great time. And, you know, the wonderful thing about the Kansas City Star at that time was that it was run by the employees.
Oh.
And so they really were very supportive. But the one thing you had to watch out for was at every desk, you'd sit down and you'd have a manual typewriter.
Oh.
And you'd sit down, and when you first came in, they'd say, that's your desk right over there. Right. And you go sit down, and you look down, and there would be E.H. carved on the top of the desk in the wood.
Yeah.
And you thought, holy cow, I'm sitting where Ernest Hemingway was sitting.
God.
And then everybody would be watching you, and then you realize every desk had E.H. on it. It was sort of a...
There must have been a fire sale from some E.H. holding company.
It was a long time ago.
Oh my God. But you went from English Lit University and stuff, all of a sudden you're at the Industrial War College and you're in the Vietnam War.
That's right. I was an ROTC grad. It was the height of the Vietnam experience. I had no choice, and I was proud to serve my country.
Intelligence, I think I see.
Well, I was an intelligence officer. I was already trained as an artillery officer and an infantry officer. So a lot of hiking. And when I was in Vietnam, I was an advisor and then part of some special programs that were mentioned in the book. By the way, you can read all about it in the book.
Yes, where's that book go?
The book is, that's all right.
We showed it once, but anyways, here it is.
Yeah,
even
copies of my orders
there.
are in here.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite an experience, an education, and...
you gotta hold that up, Paul. What are you doing?
Gotta hold it up.
You're looking at your papers and your medal there.
They're the orders, and so my life was very.
So there you are in the jungles of Nam.
That's right.
Okay, as an English lit, and you're saying, how did I get here?
And you don't have much to read, but the military was very supportive of. I felt of education. Amazing how much. I mean, if you wanted to go to one of the private schools that they had, if you came back and decided you wanted to go into a career in the military, they pay for it. It was really quite interesting. It was not my intention to do that, but I commend them for that. Then came back, went to graduate school.
Graduate school, took advantage of the
GI Bill.
GI Bill, good for you.
Economics.
Then what happened?
Economics, and then I graduated 2 years, and then the Carter administration was bringing on people who worked in private companies to work on the reorganization of state government.
I see.
That was a famous, in fact, it was my thesis called Georgia Act 1066, how to reorganize all the state agencies. And Carter had gotten this legislation through when he was a state senator.
I see.
So I was invited to be the guy in charge of transportation.
Okay.
I did that, we reorganized it, and then I moved on to natural resources.
Oh.
And during that period, I met a lot of people working in Washington on coastal zone protection.
I see.
Coastal zone.
And that's how you ended up at NOAA?
That's right.
Oh my God. Were you the weatherman?
Don't use those words. At that time, though, that's true. No, I was not on the Weather Service. The science, the National Marine Fisheries, all the coastal research programs, Sea Grant, so forth. That money went through our office and then to state universities and to the state governments. And I had the first state approved plan in the nation first estuarine sanctuary in the
Ooh,
nation,
wow.
Coos Bay in Oregon.
Wow.
I had a number of other things that I was very proud of, but I was spending all the time traveling and away
Yeah.
from
Away from
my
your
family,
family.
and so I decided to go back when I was offered the job at the Appalachian Trail Conference,
Right.
and that was great fun also.
Yes.
In fact, the chairman of the board said, "You know, Paul, what we want is a change agent, and that's what we see in you."
Oh, cool.
And that was really quite a
Yeah.
compliment.
Yeah.
So
That is a compliment.
AT was just a floundering trail at that time. We were having a hard time protecting it.
Mm-hmm.
We were losing the commitment of private property owners along the trail
I see.
because somebody who owned it might die or pass on
Right.
to his
And
children,
their parents,
and
yeah,
they
their kids
can't care
don't.
less. They just
Right.
want to sell it.
Yeah.
And so that raised a whole new agenda that was getting,
Mhm.
and the Park Service was officially in charge of it
I see.
by the National Trails and Scenic
Mhm.
Trails Act. So we got the Park Service to set up an office in Harpers Ferry,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my good friends at that time under the Nixon administration was in charge of the Secretary of Interior's contingency fund,
Okay.
and that was money the secretary had to dole out for special issues
Right.
projects.
Special projects.
And I said, Doug, can you get us some money? And he said, how much do you need? And I said, $1 million. I had no idea how much. And that was the first dollars that came to start buying up
The land on the
the
ATC.
land on the ATC.
Or AT. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Soon after that, I went into Interior, and then I was in charge of the fund itself, and we
Right.
made sure the money kept on
Mhm.
rolling.
Now, tell me about the HCRS, because that was a unique department or division within the Department of Interior. So what was their purpose function?
It really was. You hit it right on the head.
Heritage, conservation.
And Recreation Service.
Right.
We called ourselves the Hairy Canoers and Raptor Society. And we loved the fact that we didn't have to worry about the detailed management.
Right.
The Fish and Wildlife Service and the Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management, all other agencies
Forest.
in Interior.
Mm-hmm.
And then Forest Service was in agriculture.
Oh, ag, okay.
But they had to go through my department
I see.
on the money. And we were the ones who were held accountable by Congress for allocating the Land and Water Conservation Fund
Mm-hmm.
and other funds
Mhm.
that were administered. Congress wanted to have sort of a unified
One-
management.
Like an OMB,
That's right.
Office of Management and Budget, for just, environment, the parks,
Exactly.
things like that. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
So it was a small agency, 800 people.
800, right?
And-
Which is
and,
small by Washington standards.
Yes, it is. And it was a wonderful experience because the Rivers and Trails staff, very committed. These guys knew Rivers and Trails.
Sure.
A lot of them. Unfortunately, when James Watt came in, he abolished the agency.
Yes, that's what I was wondering, because it doesn't exist anymore, right?
He was told by Reagan, everybody was to cut back on federal agencies, and this was his target,
I see.
and he
It was
got
an
rid of
easy
it.
target.
And fortunately, I had already been elected the president of the National Parks and Conservation
Right.
Association. So
Right.
a lot of the agenda we had established at HCRS,
Mm-hmm.
we continued,
Mm-hmm.
and many of the staff in MPCA were involved in the Heritage Conservation Recreation
Yes,
Service programs.
yes. So the national parks, you did 2 books involving them as well. Let's grab 2 of those, because I didn't even know, but you've got National Geographic on some involvement in some of this, so that's
National
pretty impressive.
Geographic asked me to be a creative editor or supporter. I was to come up with ideas. This was one. This was one of the toughest.
Enduring treasures.
This was about, I had to
Okay.
choose one national park of each continent
Uh-huh.
and of each system, be it mountains or
Uh-huh.
coastal or whatever.
Yeah,
And this book covered it.
I see.
And I'm very, very proud of that. And this
This
was
book, yes.
was something about the American idea. I mean, you have to realize we had the first national park in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I was asked by the folks who Fulton Mifflin who wrote the dictionary on the environment, just one dictionary on the environment, and they said, we want you to define a national park. well, countries before the United States had set aside special landscapes in China and England and so forth, but they were always for a select few. They were the hunting grounds for the emperor or the king. They were the special walking gardens for the royalty.
Right.
What's unique about the national parks is that they are for all the people. They are
For all the people.
and that was the special thing that I said in that definition that had never been said before, and that is they're not just unique preservation projects, unique geological, unique natural, historical areas. They're unique because they are open to anyone who wants to go and experience them.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about our national park system.
Yeah. Well, that Ken Burns series is really nice, talking about all the different parks and things like that. And it's wonderful that you have a role in that. And
this
I guess,
one, by the way, Jimmy Carter agreed to write the an intro in this one.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think there are many copies left, but both these are available through National Geographic.
I see. Okay. So really, you went from English Lit to war to government to interior, then back out to nonprofits, and you've really been around the block.
Well, and I've been fortunate to be part of a movement that was educating me, and I was realizing, for example, back in the 80s, a group of us sat down and started talking about climate change.
Oh.
And nobody was talking about that.
Not in the
It was
80s.
not an issue.
No.
And we got Al Gore to go on a trip to the Antarctic through one of the scientists at National Geographic, at the Smithsonian. And he came back and he just said, "I can't believe all this," and he started talking about it. I'm glad that experience happened, because whether or not he's really an environmentalist, he is at least aware of the value, the power of that one issue.
Sure.
And we created a group called the Climate Institute, and they did a great deal of research
I see.
under a brilliant guy by the name of John Topping, who just recently passed away, and a great loss. But the Climate Institute was the precursor of a lot of the involvement today
I see.
of other organizations involved in climate, and also the changing agenda of many conservation groups to include climate in their agenda. The National Parks and Conservation Association was one of the first. We gave money to the Climate Institute to do a study on the impact of the climate on the national parks.
Sure.
And that was in the 80s.
Wow.
And so it was a great education. The last thing that I really enjoyed was being an advisor to a number of national park systems around the world, in China and Ireland and Germany and elsewhere.
Wow.
These people were interested in what was unique about our country's parks and how
And
they
maybe
could do it.
modeling it
That's right.
after us.
And I remember walking through the Beijing International Airport, and my friend who was the director of National Parks for China said, "Paul, look up there." And there, written across about 30, 40 feet, was this incredible statement. And I read it, thought that's familiar. And then at the end it said, "Paul Pritchard, President, National Park." So I was amazed that they had quoted me. And it was in English. I'm not sure, I don't remember whether it was in Chinese, but most people in Ireland and elsewhere are very resolute in their understanding that the United States did create something very special.
Yes, and
made it accessible.
We love our parks. We love the role that you played in that, and then that you were involved in an early movement, I guess, on climate change. So
And
we've got to keep plugging away on all of those things.
trails are part of that
We've only
experience.
got one Earth.
Yeah, we got one Earth,
One Earth.
and so I encourage everybody to get into volunteering.
Yeah. Okay.
And if they're interested in environmental issues, groups like Audubon and Sierra and a number of them have chapters now that are a great way to experience the outdoors, to learn about it, and realize how integral it is to our survival.
Yes. And everyone, your voice matters, your letters matter, You have to be heard because it's a very important issue right now. And you really were one of the fathers of conservation, and we applaud you for that and thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
All right, Paul, it's been good talking to you.
My pleasure.
Okie dokie, let's go look at some birds.